Last week, you started the process of learning how to factor two-term, three-term, and four-term polynomials. This week, you're going to start off with what's the general strategy for factoring? How do you go through the process of taking any polynomial and factoring it into a product of polynomials? And there's a step-by-step process, and I've laid it out for you here. So you're always going to start with asking yourself whether there's a common factor. If there is, factor it out. If there's not, move on. Then you count your terms. 2 terms, it's got to fit into one of these different formats. 3 terms, well, as you saw last week, you can use trial and error or you can use the AC method. 4 terms, we factor it by grouping. When you're done, and this is where things start to get a little bit different, we always have to look at determining whether or not we factored completely. And what that means is you need to take a step back and look at your polynomial and ask yourself whether or not one of the factors maybe has a common factor in it that you missed. Or it's possible that one of your binomials actually still factors. And this is mostly seen when you factor something and you end up with a difference of perfect squares still as one of your factors. And you'll get used to what it looks like and just kind of identifying it. In the end, you always check by multiplying because you know that you're just guessing. Once you go through the process of learning that strategy, then you're going to use the strategy. And then what are we doing all this for? Well, you're going to start to look at how to solve quadratic equations using factoring. And this uses something called the zero factor theorem or the zero product property. It's kind of called by both names. That says that anytime I'm multiplying 2 numbers together to be 0, one of them has to be 0. And again, I gave you a bunch of videos and a PDF that shows you how to solve quadratic equations using factoring. Now here's the important thing. Most of you have had an algebra class before and you remember the quadratic formula. That's the whole x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's not a part of this class. You will not be allowed to use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations in this class. You need to solve them using factoring. So factoring is really, really important and something that you need to take the time to learn how to do. Send me an email if you have any questions.